Hello and welcome to another amazing chess games video where I try and find some of the most outstanding chess games of all time, or chess games that have some of the most amazing moves. In this game, there is one very shocking move that you'll see towards the end of the game. So let's see how this begins. We have Frank Marshall with the black pieces. He was a U.S. chess champion back in the early 1900s, and he's playing against Stephen M. Levitsky here with white. This game was played in 1912. Some of you may be familiar with this game because the ending was so famous. It's the way the game ended is probably considered one of the most amazing moves, or one of the best chess moves of all time. So let's see what happens. We have d4 by Levitsky. So Marshall plays e6, kind of a flexible move. Maybe he's planning to play d5. His bishop can be active. Let's see what continues, what transpires here. All right, both pawns in the center, which you generally want to do if your opponent is allowing you to do this, and you control a lot of real estate here with these pawns. Now the game continues with Marshall striking back, and we've transposed into the French defense here. So pawn attacking pawn. How will his opponent respond? He just develops a knight to defend here. And now this move is called the Marshall variation of the French defense, named after Frank Marshall here, who played this. It's kind of an attacking move, but computer says this is a mistake. Why is it a mistake? Well, we'll see if the opponent can take advantage of it. It looks like he does not. He plays knight to f3, but here's what could have happened. Generally, in this position, the computer says the best move is to just break up the pawns, capture after recapture. Well, then you can either bring your bishop up here, or you could immediately recapture the pawn here, and now white would just go ahead a pawn here in this situation, and black would be left with this isolated queen pawn under attack by the knight and the queen here. So the best thing to do would be to defend, and after this, what is recommended? It looks like bishop to e3 to prevent a possible pushing of this pawn and attacking the knight, because now queen and bishop would both defend there. And so that's how the game could have gone. But in the game, we had this position. Levitsky playing knight to f3, perhaps not wanting to open up the position for Marshall, who is known as a great attacking player, also known as a swindler, who was able to swindle games from his opponent. He could be in positions that appear lost, and then he turns it around with some crazy moves. But Marshall was known for these swindling type of chess moves. But that works where you're playing individual players, but not so much in match games. So Marshall had, I believe, a match against Capablanca, and he could never rise to the very top level in chess. He was one of the best players in the world, but never in the very top tier. So the game continues with knight developing, and so we have knights and pawns. There's just a lot going on here. The pieces are attacking one another. The buildup is growing here. So a lot of action in the center of the board. And the game continues with finally a capture here, the best move in the position according to the computer. So after recapture, we have a mistake here. Bishop to e2. And this move is probably just too passive. The best move would have been bringing that bishop up here to b5 and pinning it to the knight. Because now we have Marshall being given time to just continue his development here. White runs for safety, castling. Now Marshall is ready to castle, so the game continues with the other bishop attacking knight here. But Marshall ignores that, castles his king to safety, and best move in the position. White captures the pawn, going up in material temporarily. It looks like the bishop could just go ahead and capture, but that is not played by Marshall. He probably figures, I have time to go after that pawn later. I don't want to leave my knight pinned to the queen if I move my bishop. So here his opponent centralizes a knight, attacking, maybe trying to trade off some material. So we have the bishop now capturing, and the game is almost completely even here. So knight captures. So if we take a look at this, the knight captures, getting rid of Marshall's bishop pair. He captures with the pawn, and this opens up a rook on the half-open file. So now bishop targets this pawn, threatening to capture with check. And now the queen centralizes. So here, a good move by Marshall. He defends the pawn, but he also aims here at White's king side along with this bishop. So let's see if Marshall can do anything with this. First, his opponent drops back, the best move in the position, to help defend the king side here. And also, preventing that knight from just picking off the bishop. So now we have rook centralizes, helping bring another defender to this pawn. And White brings his queen up, creating a battery here, but connecting the rooks, allowing the other rook to get into the game. Maybe both rooks could grab the half-open files in the center here. So the game continues with bishop pinning the knight to the queen. An inaccuracy, though. Better would have been apparently to just bring this pawn forward. That would keep the knight from being able to jump up here and counterattack. So White decides to capture the knight here, giving up their bishop pair. Rook recaptures, so this does help bring a rook forward. The other rook can swing in behind maybe and double up here. So the game continues with rook centralizing. And apparently this is a mistake. It would have been better to just attack the bishop. Putting the question to this bishop of whether to capture the knight or just retreat. So now we have queen to c5, lining up on the king. So this is a strategy that I see over and over again with top players, where they line a piece up, a less valuable piece up with a more valuable piece, even if there are pawns or other pieces in between. So we see it here. Bishop lined up on the queen. Queen lined up on the king. So what will the opponent do? So Marshall's opponent gets out of the line of fire of that bishop. Now Marshall could just capture this knight, perhaps. Then pawn captures and queen captures. So let's see if Marshall does that. It looks like he is going for that. So capture and queen captures. And apparently this is a mistake here. Knight to a5 would have been better. So, instead of pawn hunting, knight to a5, according to the computer, is best. Where that knight could reposition into here, towards the center. And it would have blockaded the doubled pawns here. But we're heading into the final stretch here, and we'll see why this queen here on c3 could end up being a very dangerous queen there. So a great move being played here by Marshall's opponent. He captures this pawn. The rook cannot be recaptured because of the pin here, which would capture with check. So now we have Marshall ignoring that rook, jumping forward with the knight, targeting the queen. So the queen runs away here, and we have a blunder. So apparently queen to h5 is a blunder. The computer likes queen to e4 better, keeping that queen centralized, and we'll see why that is a better move here shortly. Well, we could take a look at it now. It looks like the computer here would recommend what? Rook to f4. That's interesting. Rook to f4, apparently that would be the best move in this position. Placing the rook right where it looks like it could be captured. So what would happen if this were captured? Well, now that would allow knight to e2, forking the queen and the rook. So that's why that can't be played. So if we go back here, looks like in this position it would be better just to, move the queen up to here. But let's see what actually happened in the game. We had this blunder move. Now, why is this a blunder? And let's see if Marshall is able to take advantage of it. Computer gives rook at e to f8 as the best move, doubling up the rooks here. Marshall does find that. And, of course, that is a great move because there was the threat of just capturing that rook by the queen. So, Marshall's opponent brings the rook here, blockading this pawn, adding another attacker along with the bishop. Let's see what happens next. Well, we have rook to h6 attacking the queen. The queen runs. Now we have a rook capture and a brilliant move here. So just a brilliant move. Now we see that you probably shouldn't capture that because then the knight can jump in here, forking the king and the queen. And so that pawn, needs to stay here to cover that. So now Marshall is ahead. What do we have here? 5 pawns versus 5. Marshall is just up by a piece here. So the game continues with an attack on the queen. And this is where Marshall unleashes an amazing move, and it's the best move according to the computer. So what do you think Marshall would play here? He plays that, and this is where his opponent resigns. Now, why did his opponent resign? And this move looks crazy because this pawn can capture the queen, this pawn can capture the queen, the queen can even capture. So Marshall places his queen on a square where that queen can be captured 3 different ways. So let's take a look at these. The game is pretty much over here. So first we'll take a look at the 2 obvious pawn captures. Especially a beginner, if he was in this situation, he would probably just capture with one of the pawns. So, first of all, if we have the h-pawn capturing towards the center, because most beginners are taught to capture towards the center. Well, that would allow knight to e2 mate. So you definitely don't want to do that. So now, the other option, what if we had capture away from the center? Well, here, same kind of thing, but it's a mate in 2. Check. The rook is covering here, so the king would be forced to move into the corner and mate. All right, if we go back, we'll take a look at the final option. And if nothing would be done, if a random piece moves like a pawn or whatever, then there's also this threat of capturing here and delivering mate. So that is dangerous as well. Maybe we'll take a look at that. So I can look at that right now. So if there were some random move, like maybe this rook decides to move out of the way, if it goes here to prevent the knight from jumping in here, well then you have check like this, and the king would be forced to move over. The queen could drop down to the back rank and the king would be stuck. Because the knight is preventing the king from moving. All right. So we're in this position. Marshall has just played the amazing move of queen to g3. And we saw why you can't capture with these pawns, because it would lead to mate. The other option, capturing with the queen. So after this, well, now that would allow the fork of king and queen. So the king would be forced to move to the only square available, but then you would have capture with check, and there's a pin here with the rook, so the h-pawn can't capture. So instead, to capture that knight, if you go here, then this rook would deliver a back rank mate. So apparently in this position, the best move is to go here. And now if we look at this, it looks like knight to e2 check is best. King back to h1. And that gives time for the rook to move. And it looks like the best thing is to go here and attack this pawn and the rook. And if pieces trade off, well then Marshall has this extra knight. Otherwise, the rook will have to move, maybe to counterattack a pawn. What could be played then? b6 to protect the pawn. And in the meantime, this pawn on c2 would be under attack. So anyway, crazy, amazing ending there with that queen to g3 move. So let me go back and see how the game ended. So this was the move right here, queen to g3. I have to show it again because it's just crazy. The pawn can't capture. Both of these pawn captures lead to an immediate mate, or a pretty quick mate. And then the other option with the queen is the best way forward apparently, but even that will allow Marshall to come out an extra knight in the endgame. So I'm going to take a look at what the computer evaluates this game. Let me delete the extra stuff. So this is where the game actually ended. And if we run it through the computer, apparently the game was pretty even until the end there, where things just fell apart, especially after that queen blunder. And Marshall played with 93.2% accuracy. His opponent played 82.5%, but Marshall had a brilliant move and a great move. His opponent had one great move. And the inaccuracies, 4 for Marshall's opponent, Levitsky. 1 inaccuracy for Marshall. Marshall did have 2 mistakes. His opponent had 1, but the 1 big blunder as well. All right, I hope you enjoyed that amazing chess game. The game itself, maybe wasn't entirely amazing, but the ending, that chess move with the queen placing itself where 2 pawns and the other queen can capture, amazing ending there by Marshall. All right. Well, feel free to leave comments. I always enjoy hearing from viewers and subscribers. Like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.